Name is Rob Kleinberg, and I'm going to be your host for today. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Today, I have a really exciting topic to discuss with you. I have two amazing people here who have started something really great, and they're going to tell us a little bit more about it. Um, I have Liza Norton, who you are a CODA, is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Great. And Tiffany Moniz,
Speech
and you
therapist.
are a
Mhm.
excellent. So that's great because now we've kind of covered all three bases because I am a physical therapist. So we have each of us kind of covering the whole team.
Right.
Each one of us has worked in a SNF setting. So we're going to talk a little bit today about something that's really troubling our industry when it comes to SNF setting, and that is contract companies and unrealistic productivity expectations. So today we're going to hear from Liza and Tiffany about their experiences in some SNF settings and what they're doing about it. Most important, what they're doing about it. So, Liza, why don't we start with you? Would you like to tell us a little bit about your experiences and how we got to this point?
Definitely. Thank you, Rob, for hosting us. And just to introduce myself, I graduated from OTA school in March of 2017 from Kaiser University of Tampa. I was 21 years old, turning 22 when I graduated from OTA school. And I have 5 years of experience as a CODA, working predominantly in skilled nursing facilities under contract with national rehab contract companies. I'm really passionate about the SNF setting. My mom is a certified nursing assistant, 18 years. She's a CNA in nursing homes. So I grew up practically in nursing homes, and I knew I wanted to be in therapy by the time I was 16 years old. So it is a passion setting for me. I have experience working in Florida and New Jersey as an occupational therapist assistant, predominantly 5 years in skilled nursing facilities. The national rehab contract companies that I have experience working with are back when Encore Rehabilitation was its own company, Encore Rehab. I worked for Select Rehabilitation. I worked for Reliant Rehabilitation. I also worked for Quality Rehab Management, which is, I believe it's not a national rehab contract company, but a private equity consulting firm. But they are a national company. And so that's pretty much a little bit about myself and um, pretty much working in skilled nursing facilities throughout those 5 years. I was upheld as an assistant to 90% and above productivity requirements. A lot of the times 95% productivity requirements working for these national rehab contract companies. And I saw firsthand how unattainable productivity requirements can lead to subpar treatments, unsafe treatments, and ultimately therapists all across the United States are cutting corners to make and hit these 95% productivity requirements because of intimidation from these national rehab contract companies. And ultimately, the people suffering are vulnerable patients and seniors. So that's something that inspired me.
Or working
Absolutely,
off the clock.
we're working off the clock, absolutely. And I imagine, the introduction of like concurrent and groups was something that you were doing during this time.
Oh, yes. Concurrent and groups, that's a whole nother ballpark.
Right.
Me and Tiffany were just talking about prior to our call. That's a whole nother ballpark that we can talk about for hours.
Right. I mean, how many patients would you say that in a given day you were expected to treat?
So my last full-time position working as a certified occupational therapy assistant at a skilled nursing facility was in August of 2023. I was working for a skilled nursing facility in Zephyr Hills, Florida, under contract with Powerback Rehabilitation. I was upheld to a 95% productivity requirement, and I had 16 patients on my caseload in an 8-hour day. I had to walk away from that position because I brought this to the attention of the DOR. And unfortunately, the DOR, 25 years in the industry, I just had no pull. And this is what's happening every day to therapists working in SNFs all across the US. Every day this is happening. So that's what I can say about my experience.
Right. And to give you, so, I'm extremely lucky in the sense that I work in an in-house therapy facility in Rochester, New York. So, we've been very lucky. And it's not to say that we haven't had our challenges, of course, but, to give you a kind of comparison, my expectations are 80%. So, right. So, and,
That's
and I,
awesome.
I took right, and that and that's of course much more realistic, and we, um, of course we are doing evaluations, but I think our assistants are typically expected about 85%, and we're looking at anywhere between 9 and 12 patients a day. So you're talking a significant difference. I mean, and there's days that I think anyone could even struggle with that number of patients, right? So um, I can appreciate currently still working and seeing 12 patients in a day. The thought of having an extra four on top of that is quite overwhelming. So and I think like you're saying, I think what you were finding is that the patients were the ones who were suffering the most, and of course the therapists. Would you kind of agree with that point?
100%. I definitely think that the ones that are losing are the patients and the therapists.
Exactly. And that's, I don't want to speak for all of us here, but I imagine that most of us got into this job because we wanted to help our patients, right? And so now, you're a fresh grad out of school. You're put in this situation where you're seeing 95% productivity, and you did this all. You went through college, you paid the tuition, you did all these things um, so that you could help people. And now you're being stuck in this situation where you probably feel helpless and that you're not helping anyone, right? So, um, Tiffany, I'd love to hear your story because because like we were talking about concurrence in groups, I wasn't sure. Do speech therapists do groups as well, or is that something that
Yeah,
uh
I mean, groups can actually be, there's evidence-based practice that shows aphasia groups is very, I mean, it's just talking. It's like
mm,
very easy to really get a group of people together and talk and use their skills and cue them and facilitate that with it at a skilled level instead of, just putting them there and they're just sitting there and talking when they're supposed to be doing PTOT. But the logistics of it never would work. You might only have one aphasia patient on your caseload, or a high amount of dementia patients who you just can't rally them together in a group safely. Or just when you're trying to coordinate a group, can't leave them alone. It just didn't work out. Like, it looks good on paper, but it never worked out in the real world. But
and
yeah, I've
do you
been in the field 20 years, and not all as a speech therapist. I started out as a CNA for 5 years, a certified brain injury specialist for 5 years, and then I've been a speech therapist for 10 years. And I've seen, way back in the day when we had tons of restorative therapy helping out, tons of rehab techs helping out, just a lot. I've seen the shift in the workplace culture of everybody helping, and it's just flowing really well to everybody's just grumpy and on a zone to just get that one patient. There's like no teamwork anymore. Everybody's in their PT, OT, speech silos, and everyone's just like, if I collaborate with that other team member, I'm going to drop in productivity. So I just need to go, go, go. And it just looked awful. And we, speech therapists, had another level of issues where we would want to do video fluoroscopic swallow studies, and we were told, we can't do more than so many a month. It's too expensive. And like, well, where that's not right. Or I would want to do a fees, and they just, nobody even knew what that was. And I'm like, what? Like, so that was an issue with, and then the shift to PDPM was awful, where all of a sudden you had leeway before that with rugs they would put like tons of hours on your schedule, but you could just do what you thought was appropriate and then be done at the end of the day. There wasn't a lot of pressure on you, but of course there was a lot of fraud going on at the upper management, shifting those minutes around. But you at least didn't feel the heat. But the shift to PDPM, they're like 15 minutes, and then you were just getting reprimanded. Like, why didn't you stop at 15 minutes? And I'm just like, they needed it. And I would just we're giving away free therapy. You're giving away free therapy. I'm like, then I'm going to give away free therapy. And they never really, yeah, right out of grad school, my very first job, the director of rehab was promoted from a rehab tech because they just couldn't fill it with a clinician. So I feel like she really wasn't trying to do anything bad. I think she was pretty naive and wasn't a clinician, and she was forging my name on eval and treat orders and faxing it to the doctors. And I was just like, what? You can't do that. And she's like, well, I was just trying to help you because you're so busy, and I just wanted to speed along the process. I'm like, no, there's a whole process that goes into that. I need to screen them. I need to determine it's warranted. And that's just you're forging my signature. And so she was fired. And then I think
Was
after that,
at a contract company or?
Mm-hmm. But that was I was a new grad. So I feel like after that, a lot of people didn't try to push me because they thought, well, she's going to get you fired. So it was pretty easy for me. I would get the pushback, but then they'd back off, and then they'd be like, do that. Or I'd get like little letters on my desk, like, like it would have a printout of my productivity from the day before, and it would say like, please reach this today. And I just shred it. Like, I'd make scrap paper out of it. And like, okay, thank you for rubbing it in my face. I'm not good enough every single day. But the straw that broke, when I just got sick of it was during COVID. And so you already felt this slow stripping of your autonomy over the years. And then COVID happened, and I was furloughed enough to not financially support my family, but I wasn't furloughed enough to apply and receive unemployment. So I was just stuck in this in between. And I was trying to, I knew Medicare manual regs, and I knew they were allowing telehealth. And I'm like, why can't we jump on the telehealth? Like, I could do speech therapy, telehealth, or even in the facility, telehealth into the room. Like, I could make this work. And they were just like, no, speech isn't medically necessary. I'm like, well, I've been documenting that my entire career. I don't know how. I'm like, so people are just going to aspirate. Okay. So I didn't feel valued. Like, my ideas weren't valued. And so finally my financial autonomy was stripped away from me. So I was like, bye, I'll just start my own company. That's what I did.
Congratulations. That's a really great story that you were able to do that. And you've been doing that for how long? Your own company?
Since 2020, 4 years.
Oh, excellent. And so, you touched on a lot of points that I think a lot of people can relate to, or a lot of therapists can relate to. You mentioned that things were kind of starting to get stripped away. Like it's almost like they were trimming the fat, right? So, and you mentioned the switch from the rugs to the PDPM model. And, I think I can kind of relate to that. And I think we all can, is that was kind of the turning point where all of a sudden, you really noticed that there was a huge difference and a huge shift where, you know, for those who, weren't around at that time or not sure what we're discussing. So RUG scores were something that was used to reimburse SNFs. RUG scores were great for therapists because we were really the kings of the castle. We were leading how the SNF was getting reimbursed from the government, right? The more we provided, the more minutes we provided, the more money we would get. So having a really beefy, large therapy department was valued because we were the money makers, right? And then PDPM came along, and that was in around 2019, and all of a sudden that was no longer the case, right? It started to go to the complexity of the patient was how you were going to get paid, and minutes in therapy no longer mattered. And then you started to see at that point, you started to see that the layoffs, right? So our number of patients in our facilities started to drop, which increased all of our caseloads. Like you were saying, the time no longer mattered, so like you hit on so many points, and like, in that story of things that really was happening to just really everyone around us. And, I kept hearing, like you said, you felt, I could kind of relate to when you said that, you felt stuck. And I think a lot of therapists can relate to that point, because you always hear, oh, the grass isn't greener on the other side. As a PT, I think I have more options, and I think it's wonderful that you went out and started your own company, but a lot of people don't have that option. You've been working in a SNF for, 20 years or even 10 years. Now, where do you go from there? There's only so many peds jobs. There's only so many, other options out there. So people did feel stuck, and I'm curious to hear your takes on this, because it seemed like right around the time that PDPM came along, the contract companies also came into my area. So it was really, they kind of like compounded each other. Was that not the case for you guys? I'm kind of curious to hear that.
Yes, absolutely.
So that PDPM and yeah, they kind of came in conjunction with each other around the same time.
You mean buying each other out, merging?
Well, I mean, so for instance, in my area, it was all in-house. We were all in-house, pretty much every nursing home in my area, at least as far as I'm aware, was an in-house led, um, PT and therapy department. And it was right around 2019, 2018, 2019 that started to shift. Where you started to hear about these contract companies swooping in, buying up all the, contracts in the area, and cutting wages, increasing the productivity. And is that not the case for you, Tiffany? I'm just curious because you no, when did it
No,
begin for you?
I didn't notice that. And I'm just trying to think about it
Okay.
logically, like financially, like
Yeah.
why would that happen? Because the facilities no longer need therapy. They already have the money. So why would they want to pay a rehab company to come in and pay extra when they're already getting paid, regardless if their patients are getting therapy or not? So I didn't know why.
Sure.
I was trying to figure out why, if you did see that pattern, why.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, my guess would be, and I'm not 100% sure on this, but my guess would be that the the allure of the contract company is to come in and tell you that we're going to cut everything to the point where, we're going to save you money, right? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. These contract companies are going to come in, they're going to save you money by not having to worry about, people being out sick. You don't have to worry about, paying,
That's true.
things like that. So, it's like in a point where, all of a sudden now COVID is going on, people are, switching jobs all the time. The contract company comes in. I think they provide stability in the sense that, they have a huge bank of therapists that they can just move around at their whim, because they don't, there's no compassion or care of, you're just a number to them. They can move you around from facility to facility. They can, pay you a much lower rate, increase your productivity to 95% so that you don't have to pay as many therapists. So I think my assumption is that the contract companies are coming in offering to cut your costs significantly, and that's why a lot of the facilities kind of went that way.
I wonder
Um,
if it really is.
Yeah, and Rob, it's funny that you say that because I I received some insight regarding select rehabilitation, cutting therapist wages. Back then, when the PDPM change happened, 3% at the same time, select rehabilitation made an acquisition, like a major acquisition. So people have insight on this, and this, I do believe this occurred. It happened in my area at the time where I was in New Jersey. During COVID, it did happen. So I did see that.
right.
Yeah, also I think like logically, if they promise to save them money, but then they're diluting the quality of care, aren't they pumping out more rehospitalizations and more? Doesn't the facility get dinged if they go back to the hospital? Like, isn't that, wouldn't we see that research? I wish I could look that up.
Well, it's a really good point, and um, I've noticed here locally the facilities are starting to go back to in-house departments. So obviously that's why we're here. We're here to discuss that exact point, right? We're hoping for that to be the case. And I have to say here in my hometown, it is. So, obviously these contract companies are neglectful. They're taking advantage of us. It's been going on for years. I don't think a lot of people who work outside the SNF setting really understand that. I mean, our brothers and sisters who work in outpatient facilities, in the hospital, I mean, we all had our stresses during COVID, but I think everyone kind of had an idea that, well, geez, SNFs are really a tough place to work right now. But I don't think anyone really truly appreciated what we were going through. And I was having a conversation this morning on LinkedIn, and I put this point out there that said, if one aspect of, this is rough, more about physical therapy, but if one aspect of physical therapy, the quality is dropping, if SNF settings are, you know, not providing quality physical therapy, for instance, do you think that's going to affect the whole physical therapy world, right? If you come out of a SNF setting having a terrible therapy experience because you were rushed and your therapist was burnt out, do you think that that patient's going to be excited to go to an outpatient clinic? Or in terms of speech, if they had a terrible experience in the SNF setting, are they going to want to come to you, Tiffany? Or, I mean, or go to see a hand specialist
They're not going to
when
make
they're
it.
they're not they're going to be back in the
They're gonna
hospital.
live in the nursing home. The beds are gonna get
They,
filled and no one's gonna leave.
you make a very valid point, and I would argue I think that is the trend. That you're seeing more and more people staying and ending up not being
Deteriorate.
discharged home. Yeah, and I think you're talking about, like, why aren't we looking at the numbers? There's a couple numbers to be looking at, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is the PDPM model the best for the patient? Um, is contract companies the best way to go? So I want to talk a little bit about the movement you guys have started. And you know, you have started a group on Facebook. Liza, do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yes. So I started the group USA-based OT, PT, and SLP Therapists United for Change after my own personal experiences working in SNF setting over the last 5 years under major national rehab contract companies that upheld me to what I believe are unattainable productivity metrics. And for many years, I was part of several Facebook groups for rehab professionals, therapists all across the country. And I was able to see that many other therapists were either in my same shoes or worse. And when I thought it couldn't get worse, what I experienced back in August of 2023, working at a SNF in Zephyrhills, Florida, under contract with Powerback Rehabilitation, a national contract rehab company, I thought this can't be any worse. And sure enough, on these Facebook, rehab professional groups, I was hearing stories that resonated so deeply with me at such great numbers that I had to reach out in the comments. And I would reach out and I would ask the original posters of the comment. A lot of the times, these people are commenting anonymous on these groups because there is so much fear associated with this topic. There is a lot of fear associated with speaking out about unrealistic productivity standards because during COVID, a lot of us were speaking out and these companies retaliated against us because they had people in these groups and they were firing therapists, and many therapists lost their jobs back during COVID because of this. So a lot of people stopped speaking out because therapists in droves were losing their jobs working for national rehab contract companies because they were posting their experiences, their real life experiences. They were posting them publicly on these Facebook groups for rehab professionals. And these companies inside these groups were firing these therapists. And because of this, a lot of people stopped speaking out and a lot of fear started surrounding the topic. But recently, because, like you said, Rob, it's gotten so bad, we are all in disbelief that this is where SNF therapy is at. And people are ready to speak out. People are ready to share their stories, and people are doing it on these groups and in our group. And I think it's important to keep the conversation going and to not give up, because I think that we can make change if we unite and we take steps to work together towards the better of our profession. Because like you said, we don't want to give rehab a bad name in this country. We want patients to be excited about therapy. We want there to be a good energy around our profession. So why do we all feel, or why do the majority of us in SNF therapy feel this way? I think it's time we address it. And I think that's what we're doing in our group.
That's amazing. And the beautiful thing that I've noticed, so I joined your group, I don't know, maybe about 3 weeks ago when we first met. And at the time, I think you had maybe 300 members, which is great. I think I think I last saw it about 1,200 members, which is amazing. It's blowing up, and I hope that we're getting the message out there for more people to join. And I know you recently had a video meeting, and you're going to be having more. And I was able to listen to that as well. And the thing that really stuck out to me was the amazing amount of experience of people that were in the meeting. I mean, I really felt, there were people that were talking about things that were going on in the 90s, whistleblowers that have gone through this process already of reining people in, and reining contract companies in, and things like that, of neglect and abuse to their employees and their residents. That it was really inspirational. I think there was people with 20, 30 years of experience talking, and it was really an amazing uh meeting. And I'm really excited for the next one. And can you tell us a little bit about that meeting and what came from that?
Yeah, I feel like we had some higher ups in the meeting, and we got to hear their explanation of why they're doing what they're doing to us. And I mean, their main excuse was, we're business. We need to make a profit. I don't know if you were there for that part, but I
A little
just
bit of
don't
it, yep.
I don't believe it. And I feel like that, but I liked getting that feedback because it gives me more ammunition to come back and say, I don't think that's the case, because your CEOs are making millions. There's money there. If they really didn't want that facility to go belly up, they could allocate money there. And number two, I feel like, okay, let's run through the scenario. If you do brainwash all your staff into thinking, got to keep this facility running or you won't have a job, and you keep providing substandard care and dilute the care to the point where all the residents start talking about how horrible the rehab department is, you're going to get fired anyway. That the in-house, the SNF is going to not renew your contract. And then you're going to lose your job anyway. Now, let's say you don't drink the Kool-Aid and say, I don't think it's going to go belly up, or even if it does, I don't care, because when that rehab company goes belly up, the SNF will be like, you guys are great therapists. You guys provided good care. Come work for us in-house. So that could be a perfect solution of just having everybody be in unity to just say, okay, thank you for suggesting 98% productivity, but not going to happen. And then just go on with your day. Keep working. Keep providing good quality care. It will be rewarded. Even if your contract company goes belly up, you will still have a good reputation as a good therapist.
At the end of the day, you need to be able to lay in your bed, and I think you're absolutely right. You need to have the moral uh high ground here, and you need to be able to, sleep with that at night. So I completely
Mhm.
agree with you.
And
So
then
we have a couple more.
we also got good insight from the whistleblowers,
Mhm.
knowing that there's so many paths to take, just to stand your ground, keep doing what you're doing and keep working, or be on a whistleblower path, memorialize everything, and just be, that could be your mission, but you need to know the ramifications that these women went through, and that it's not just easy and you don't just become a millionaire. It's not like that. So it's good to hear their stories. So that was another valuable, but then these women can also put out a resource of who to call, who to report to. I mean, I remember, like I said, I've been in the field for 20 years. I used to see ombudsman numbers on the posters in the break room, in the elevator.
Yep.
If I wanted to report somebody right now, I don't even know what number to call. I don't know. Like, I would not know who to call. So I think these
Right.
resources made by these women who've been through it and have so much knowledge is a valuable resource that we could provide at the group.
So the plan is to have about a monthly meeting, from my understanding.
That's correct.
And right. So, and quickly just tell me a little bit about what ultimately you're looking to, kind of accrue information. Is that about right? To get people to be able to talk about their situations in one space where they can, get information as to where to submit that information, but also just to kind of come and have a place to kind of let that all out, right? To like let it off of your shoulders and do something about it. So I'm really excited for our next meeting. And I really hope that everyone joins the group, because I think they're doing something very important here. This is not, um, this is not something that we can ignore anymore.
One of the goals that we've been discussing in our group is to conduct some sort of research on productivity requirements for national rehab contract companies, because we see that the national rehab contract companies are setting the industry standard in SNFs across the United States. So if we can conduct some research through surveys, using SurveyMonkey and having surveys based on what national companies are requiring, what productivity requirements, we can have a base to work off of, and see what companies are better suited to work for. And ultimately, like you said, Rob, the in-home therapy, that the model for SNFs, um, my PRN SNF is 55 minutes from my house in-house, and it's hard to come across. So hopefully we can shift, therapists to go towards that in-home therapy.
Sure. And you just made a good point that um, when you're talking about taking surveys, not only are we going to find out what the who are the good guys, but you're probably going to find out, and I think you probably already know the answer, but at least you'll have the numbers there to say these are the bad guys. And like these are the people that you need to just completely ignore when you see those listings come up on the job search sites. And it's so funny because you do see them popping up every couple months, right? I mean, they're constantly on there um, with job openings because nobody stays. Um, but that might be an interesting insight too, is to say, these are if you do have to work here, in this area, here's a good place, but here's also the bad ones. Um, so that sounds like a great place to start. And, so you're accumulating stories, you're accumulating statistics.
Yeah,
Ultimately, go
and
ahead.
on topic, because I just heard you say accumulating stories. As far as accumulating stories, we're working together as a group. We've formed a committee on our group. And like you said, in our first planning meeting back on January 27th, we had some brilliant minds on that meeting. We had a wealth of experience on that meeting. Like you said, many people on there, 20, 25, 30 years in the industry. Just imagine what we can do if we come together. I posted a poll on our group just a few days ago with some times for our next planning meeting. We already have 55 votes on that poll. So as our group is gaining exposure, we're at 1,300 members right now. As our group gains exposure, as we start holding these planning meetings, I expect that our next planning meeting on February 27th on Tuesday, I expect more people to come to that meeting. That meeting is also going to be recorded. It's also going to be posted on our group. So the information that we're accumulating and the discussions that we're having are only going to continue to build because we're not going to stop having these discussions. We're ready to open the table up to therapists all across the country.
That's great. And ultimately, what's your kind of end goal for here? I know, during the first meeting, there was talk about litigation and going to Congress. And I know that process is actually, it sounds like it's already kind of started with some of the
Absolutely.
people that were in those meetings, the group meetings. But ultimately,
Absolutely.
is that kind of where you see this headed? Is that, ultimately
Absolutely.
the goal, taking these guys down, really, right?
Absolutely, Rob. And we all know that this is the goal in our group because we
Mhm.
know that the cuts continue to come year after year. We have cuts coming to just on January 1st, starting January 1st of this year. The overall payment rates for outpatient OT services under Medicare were reduced by an estimated 3.1%. They're going to continue to do this. So, yes, like you said, many people in our group are actively writing letters to members of Congress. We're actively making phone calls, and we are going to continue to spread this information in our group to inform and educate therapists on how to be able to advocate for our profession. Because if we're the frontliners and we're not going to advocate for our profession, who's going to do it for us? It's time for us to speak up and to start taking a stand for the betterment of our field. We want to see our profession be better. We don't want to continue to see cuts, continue to see poor working conditions. We want to see our fields get better. So that's the long-term goal, is to make change. We are united. We're trying to unite to make change.
Yeah, and we could use all of the data we're collecting and stories to bring when you have a face to face. If you're one of the group members that's gun ho, just gonna say, okay, give me the data, I'll download it, we could post it, and then schedule a face to face with your local congressman. There, I mean, I haven't done it yet, but those who have said it's very easy. You go to lunch with them, you talk to them, and you bring up the points, and not only the points that the reimbursement rates have to stop dropping, because that's not the end solution. The rehab companies will just take the profit from that. That still won't change everything. But it's pretty sad that we're the ones that have to lobby for that when this companies who make millions could hire a really good lawyer to do that, but they don't. They just complain about it. And also, I think when you're talking to your congressman, you need to advocate for some sort of laws that these contract companies have to abide by to, like, not go above 85% or something like that.
Right. I mean, I think, kind of circling back to what we talked about before, where, we were getting paid by the amount of therapy we were given. Right now we're getting paid by our outcomes. Will it kind of end up in the sheets? We'll see. I mean, is it going to show that an in-house therapy department is going to do better than these contract companies? I hope so. I mean, I would hope that would happen. But these kinds of changes take a lot of time. But I really do think that's the way to do it, right? We have to speak to our congressmen. They're the ones they're the ones that are going to hold the power here to make changes.
Mhm.
So I think this is, like I said before, I think this is extraordinarily important. Every therapist, be it PT, OT, SLP, wherever you are, if you're an outpatient, you're a hospital, it doesn't matter. We are all one and we need to work together.
Exactly.
I think for PTs, I think I saw that, 15 to 20% of us work in SNFs.
Yeah.
That's a huge number of people that are going through this on a daily basis. And, I'm lucky. I'm one of the lucky ones, but there are a lot of you that are out there that are not. And I hope you're listening to this, and I hope you're going to go and click on the link below to join, Liza and Tiffany's Facebook group, so that you can be part of the solution instead of,
Yeah.
we can't just keep complaining to ourselves in our little
Mhm.
circles. It's time to take it out to the next step. So I hope we see you at the next meeting, because I know I will definitely be there. And I hope, you click on that link and start making your voice heard, put in your statistics, just give input. That way, the more information we have, the better, right?
That's right.
So, and it was a real pleasure and honor to speak with both of you. I love what you're both doing, and I respect what you both are doing, and I wish you the best of luck. And I can't wait to have another podcast in a couple of years when we get to find out that you took down a large conglomerate company where, we are able to really make a difference. So I look forward to seeing all that progress unfold.
Me too, Rob. And I hope it's a lot sooner than a few years that we get to
Oh
do this
yeah,
again.
well, these things take time, but I hope, right,
That's
exactly.
right.
The sooner the better. Let's absolutely amen to that.
Yeah,
So
we all have to stay united if it's going to happen, because this isn't the first time a group like this started.
That's
There
right.
was another group, and everybody had this momentum, and then when it came time for, like, everybody to organize and do their part, not everybody did, and then it just went away. Just nobody really was active anymore. They lost interest, and I feel like what went wrong was everybody in the group wanted the solution handed to them on a silver platter by whoever organized the group. That's not going to happen. That's not what we're doing. We're trying to make people unite and give you resources so you could go and fight. You can go and speak to your congressman, and you just have all the resources to do so step by step, or
that's wonderful.
unionize in your own department. But we can't do that for you.
Exactly.
Right. And there is power in numbers, right? So,
That's right.
obviously our voice is going to be heard the louder we roar here, and the more people who are involved and saying the same things to these congressmen, they're gonna have to get it at some point, right?
You got it.
So wonderful. So thank you again so much for coming on. And like I said before, I look forward to hearing about all your success in the future. So,
Thank you so much, Rob.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
yes. All right. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.